Everyone knows the legacy Lost Levels carries. Its difficulty is notorious for its often masochistic enjoyment of the player's misery. When you begin Lost Levels, the game presents you with the decision of playing as either Mario or Luigi. That might not sound like a big deal because it could have been included as an olive branch for fans of the better Mario brother. At least it could have. In actuality, Luigi game is the pseudo-hard mode of already the most infamous Mario game. So the question is, can you beat Lost Levels as Luigi? To begin, I first have to set the stage. For this video, I debated on which version of Lost Levels I should play. I ultimately decided to play the All-Stars version because all of us watching this video first experienced Lost Levels with the aforementioned version. Also, Lost Levels is more visually appealing to look at. For additional context, Luigi initially existed as a green sprite-top version of Mario. This carried over until Lost Levels. This is important to note because Lost Levels is very unforgiving with its platforming. Combine that with Luigi's high jump and ice physics, you begin to notice where the hard mode argument comes from. However, before starting my playthrough, I decided to set some ground rules for myself. In my review, I stated that Lost Levels is a game that cheats, and if it cheats, I'm gonna cheat back. However, in order to make this already hard game harder, I will not be using warp zones, the rewind feature on Mezzin, and the 1-up trick. If you could see my face, it's nodding now. Once I select Luigi game and press the start button, the trial begins. Lost Levels at the beginning is honestly not that bad up until World 4 when the game takes a sudden difficulty spike. The first 3 worlds are the usual set pieces that were previous in Super Mario Bros. Although when you start, the game quickly presents its fangs. The first mushroom that has been present in every 2D Mario game is replaced with a poison mushroom. I feel I should say this now, Lost Levels in terms of its item placement is not very conservative. In reality, it's erratic and there's no other way I can put it. Usually if you see a lot of item blocks, one of them will have an item. However, in Lost Levels, they'll either put one over a bottomless pit or in a row with one of them guaranteed to have a poison mushroom. I mention this because I got used to being small Luigi my entire playthrough. In fact, speaking of Luigi, his controls had a bit of a learning curve to them. He jumps higher and has less traction, which happened on 2 occasions in 1-2 and 1 Castle. Though in 1-1, I was fortunate to get 5 lives, and in Lost Levels, extra lives are very precious. However, thankfully in the next stage, Luigi's high jump allowed me to skip the platforming sections with the collapsing beams and reach the pipe. After a couple of missteps in the next stage, which I account for my mistakes and not the level design, I begin the first castle. The first castle is very tame. Defeating Bowser is the same as it was before, and while it sucks I lost 3 lives early on, we still have 7 worlds left to go. My opinion on World 2 is similar to World 1. The levels are on the same difficulty level as World 1, and for the most part, the first 2 levels are very flat to traverse. When you get to the section in 2-2 where you have to hit the invisible blocks to reach the pipe, if you combine a good well-timed sprint jump, Luigi is easily able to cover more ground because if you're playing as Mario, you'll need more ground to build speed. And if you're not careful, the screen will move right too far, leaving you with only the bottomless pit nearby. What I took away most from playing World 2's remaining levels is that when you play as Luigi, you have to be more cautious when performing the more tighter jumps, because Luigi's traction can and will screw you over if you're too light-footed. Then again, I like how the gameplay demonstrates the difference between the brothers, with Mario being well-rounded and precise, while Luigi being slippery and cautious. The biggest compliment I can give Lost Levels is that for the first time, it made Mario and Luigi distinct characters. However, World 3 is where the game starts to test your patience. Case in point, the first enemy you see is 2 Hammer Bros, as well as Bullet Bills later on. At the end of the level, there's a trampoline that'll shoot Luigi high into the air, so much so that you can skip the flagpole. But just to be clear, don't do that because there's a warp zone at the end that'll take you back to World 1. Moving to the next stage, 3-2 is the first underwater level, and one thing to know about these stages is that when over a bottomless pit, a current will aggressively try to pull you down. And if that's not bad enough, Lost Levels loves to put bloopers at certain choke points, forcing you to take the more dangerous lower passageway. Also, you can't stop enemies underwater, which I found out right before the end. The next stage isn't very hard. Once again, Luigi's high jump comes in very useful because he can get a ton of air jumping atop Paracoopas. Instead, it's a preamble to 3 Castle, which is the first maze castle. However, thanks to this being the All-Stars version, the game uses sound effects to let you know if you've chosen the correct path. After almost sliding into a fire trap, unfortunately my second attempt for this level resulted in my first game over. By this point, the extra lives I gained were starting to go away, and in Lost Levels, it's only inevitable you'll lose them. Yet once again, this is where All-Stars proves to be the better version because you can continue at the level you're currently on. If this were the Famicom version, it's back to the beginning of the world for you. And this in my opinion is the major reason All-Stars is the superior version, because this version actually makes the game semi-enjoyable. Before moving on, I'd also like to add that Castle 3 starts introducing traps into the Bowser fights, and they only get more clinching further on. At this point, we've now arrived at World 4 and the halfway point of the game. For the most part, the level design of the first two levels are not that bad. The first stage introduces the Loquito enemy, however, as long as you keep running, you'll eventually outrun him. Though in the beginning, the section with the trampoline is a little finicky for my taste. 4-2 afterwards is once again not that very challenging. In this block there's a hidden Starman and you can use it to go crazy on the numerous enemies in your way. However, 4-3 is a different story. If there was a focal point when Lost Levels difficulty revealed itself, it would be in this stage. 4-3 is a very mask-off moment for Lost Levels. Case in point, the first thing you do is take a leap of faith. This entire stage is set over a massive bottomless pit, and any miscalculation on my part is one less life for Luigi. I will however say that these levels can be much easier as Luigi. Like in this part when you have to perform another leap of faith and his high jump allows him to easily reach the Koopa. Or in this part when you have to jump to this platform while avoiding an incoming bullet bill. And that jump I know for a fact Mario cannot reach. Though after all that explanation, it didn't stop me from losing 2 lives at the very end. 4-4 is in my opinion also where the castle stages become more difficult. There are more specific instances of tighter platforming and those annoying long fireballs where I got my second game over. In fact, I got 2 game overs in this stage because for some reason, Lost Levels decided to put a hammer bro at the end for no reason. To top it off, the Bowser boss fight is a low ceiling in the middle of the room. I wish I could say things get better, but no, this is Lost Levels, what do you expect? World 5 in many cases doubles down on the difficulty curve, which is proven when 5-1 begins with the win gimmick. If you're not careful, you'll easily be pushed aside like it's nothing. From this point onwards, I think the best playstyle is to go slow and be very precise with your platforming, with the pathway to the dead end being full of Koopas and Piranha Plants. Lost Levels introduces the red Piranha Plants who come out of their pipes more aggressively, unlike their green counterparts. These guys become especially annoying in World 7. 5-2 is the second underground level, and it's not that hard except for the end before the pipe. As long as you have enough speed, you can easily make it. However, 5-3 is a different story, because in this stage there are no checkpoints to speak of at all. The most likely explanation is that 5-3 is a very short level. It's technically a maze where you have to decipher what the correct pipe you have to go down is. Thankfully it's the first one, but the last half of this stage is full of cheap level design. You not only have to avoid red Piranha Plants and bullet bills, you have to make sure you can jump on the Para-Koopa to reach the platform. Though this is where I'm grateful to be Luigi because Luigi can get a ton of air stomping on enemies, and just a warning, be careful at this final platform because you'll need to reach the goalpost. The biggest threat in Castle 5 are once again the fire sticks, but I actually managed to get through on my first attempt, although I almost got burned thanks to ice physics. From here we move on to World 6, and honestly, I don't have much to say about this world. In general, the level design is very flat and each level has its own gimmick. 6-1 brings back the wind, 6-2 is the last fully underwater level, and 6-3 is a cheap bridge level. When I got to the end of 6-3 and managed to jump over the Para-Koopa, I began to wonder. You see, back when I initially played Lost Levels as Mario, by this point I was well frustrated with Lost Levels' frustrating design choices. Luigi was a character I avoid playing thanks to his characteristics, and while he is someone you have to get used to, there were moments I preferred playing as Luigi because, case in point, the jump that started this mini tangent would have been possible as Mario. I'm telling you, that high jump comes in incredibly useful at the right moments. To get back to the game, Castle 6 is the hardest castle in the game. It's unfortunately another maze castle, and it instantly hits you the second you enter the stage. Mix it with awful Hammer Bros placement, difficult set pieces like when you have to use the beams to reach the lower platform. You can see how these ingredients combine to make a pretty foul dish. My particular least favorite moment is where you can be blindsided by the giant fire stick. Now, if you think the last 2 worlds would ease up on the difficulty, you would be mistaken because, do you realize what game I'm playing? Already, I'm not off to a good start. Upon seeing the wind come back, I kicked the Koopa shell off the cliff, accidentally running into it and losing another life. So, let that set the mood for the world. If you're not familiar with this stage's design, it can quickly start to become very frustrating. Thankfully, in this block, there's a hidden Starman, and I wholly recommend you take it. The reason why is because this stage throws 3 Hammer Bros at you. Also, I made sure to get this guy because his placement is best described in words YouTube doesn't like. The fun doesn't last forever because when I jump on the Buzzy Beetle, the game tweaks out, unfortunately resulting in my next game over. At this point during my playthrough, I only had 3 total game overs. But now that I'm at the end game, let's just say they'll soon start to pile in. 7-2 is exactly like 5-3, and by that I mean 1 for 1 in terms of level design. The correct path is located in the first pipe you'll come across, and to the keen eyes watching, in the top left block there's a hidden fire flower if you're Big Luigi. That fire flower, speaking of, comes especially handy when you're dealing with the Loquitos in the last stretch of the stage. You also have to time your stop at this Paracupa landing on the pipe with the Piranha Plant. However, if you avoided taking damage, you could do what I did and use the invincibility frames to reach the goalpost. It's not like you'll need the Fire Flower for the next stage because this stage is not the hardest design-wise, but it can be if you're too reckless. This stage, I'm sure some of you are familiar with, is the one where there are numerous trampolines scattered across the level, and you have to fling yourself point to point over a long bottomless pit. The trick I find with this level is you never want to get greedy with your jumps. This is funnily enough where the wind actually proves to be useful because it can allow you to jump further, though I say that also remembering that it can push you into a bottomless pit, with the trampolines set on narrow platforms, which is how I got another game over in this stage. Now, Castle 7 if I were playing as Mario wouldn't be that bad. However, since the corridors are very narrow, Luigi's high jump can come as a detriment during gameplay. In the section where you have to bounce top Koopas over a narrow hallway, Luigi's high jump combined with his sprint can sometimes cause you to overshoot your jump, causing either a collision with the Koopa or into the lava. However, we're now close to the finish line, and World 8, surprise surprise, also doesn't let up on the difficulty. One of the first obstacles is the wind pushing you while the game once again requires you to align yourself with the Paracoopas. You can, as a caveat, tease your way to the right to negate the wind. If that's not bad enough, you'll next have to take another leap of faith while having to face 3 Hammer Bros who will try to walk you down. And just to get this out there, World 8 single-handedly tripled my total game overs. World 8 symbolizes the worst of Lost Levels level design, exemplified by the previous Leap of Faith and Hammer Bros. 8-2 at least gives you a bit of a respite. At the point with the Paracoopa, you have to hit the block to grow a beanstalk as it'll lead you to the flagpole. Just be careful with the trampoline and use the top to reach the other side, which thankfully Luigi can do. No, but 8-3 is the last run before the final castle, and I won't lie to you guys, this level is no fun. In fact, I think it's the worst level in the game. Not only is there a Lakitu chasing you throughout the stage, but this stage for some reason loves Hammer Bros and putting invisible blocks in the worst place imaginable. After jumping past the first one in a move that can only be described as cheap, there would be a second Hammer Bro, and right when you jump, there was a hidden block with a poison mushroom inside. And in other words, you would be blue-balled instantly. It was this specific section where the game overs started to pile up. In fact, out of the 12 total game overs I accumulated, 6 were in 8-3 alone. After managing to get past the 2 duos of Hammer Bros, yes there was 2 more, I reached the last portion of the level. Here, I used the hidden blocks to reach the platform, and suffice to say, don't be hasty at this part because you need the other platform to reach the goalpost. Bowser's Castle, like Super Mario Bros, has you navigate a maze to find the correct path. The previous stage did cost me a number of lives, and to state the obvious, I got another game over in this stage. Once I was refilled on lives thanks to All-Stars, the first fork in the road you'll come across is the first pipe leading into an underwater segment like in the previous game. It's not particularly hard, however what is hard is this jump you have to make because you have to make sure you have enough momentum to reach the pipe. What I like to do is get the hidden mushroom, that way I can use it to tank the Piranha Plant. If by chance you're small Luigi, make sure you avoid a hidden poison mushroom at the pipe before the lava pit, which speaking of holds a platform with a secret path, in this case being the bottom one. After running down the long hallway, jump on the red Koopa as he flies low in the green Koopa when he's all the way to the right. After going through the pipe, avoid the fake Bowser and leg it to the real Bowser, defeating him for good. Then Luigi saves Peach, and where every normal playthrough ends. However, we still have the extra worlds to do. To quickly get the explanation out of the way, after completing a normal playthrough, when you boot up Lost Levels, World 9 will become available. To unlock the Alphabet Worlds, the player would have to beat the game 8 times, at least if you were playing the Famicom version. Thankfully, since this is All-Stars, you don't have to do all that rubbish, and instead you'll just go from world to world as usual. They're described as this game's most difficult levels, and given that I'm playing Lost Levels as Luigi, this should be rather interesting. To start, we begin with World 9. For all the talk of being the hardest stages in the game, World 9 is not that bad. With the exception of 9-3, World 9 stages are all underwater. There are a lot of traps like Koopas and swimming Lakitus, but because both Mario Brothers control the same underwater, it's a mad dash to the flagpole. I bring up 9-3 specifically because just by looking at it, I feel as though it was some kind of test room for the developers. There are no enemies with the exception of Bowser, but you can entirely ignore him if you jump atop the screen like I did. It's a very short stage, but it takes the trophy for the strangest level in the game. 9-4, believe it or not, isn't a castle stage, making it the only of its kind in the game. It's a long corridor spelling thank you in Japanese, which, while a kind gesture to players who beat the game, probably feels a bit bittersweet if I could be honest. though from here it gets a bit sour once I begin the alphabet levels. I was at the very least in high spirits, and while there are many instances of ball-clenching difficulty, the alphabet worlds are essentially one big test meant to see if you're worthy enough to be a, and I quote, super player. Lost Levels throws everything in the kitchen sink at you with the hope of breaking you down. One of the ways it does this is by removing checkpoints, but if you've gotten this far, anything is possible. As long as you're patient, you can do it. If I at least had to break down the level design, there will be moments where the level will be very easy until you reach a choke point, serving as the most difficult part of the stage. A perfect example of this being Sea Castle, where it has the worst trap in a 2D platformer. Out of everything in this game, this is the pinnacle of Lost Levels level design. You might recognize this from 7.4, and while that is true, before you were safe as long as you hugged the corner, but this time around that previous tactic is no longer useful. What you have to do now is you have to time for the fireball as it touches the top left corner, then run jumping at the right moment to not get hit. I got lucky and did it on my first attempt, but off screen it took multiple times. This is why at the end of the day, when you play Lost Levels, you play the superior All-Stars version. Even if you get a game over, you could quickly retry at a moment's notice. Don't waste your time and do 8 playthroughs of this game on the Famicom. I guarantee if All-Stars didn't exist, no one would know about these stages besides in videos about obscure Mario facts. Oh, and if you're wondering what happens when you beat D4, the ending is exactly the same, only more kisses appear on Luigi's face. So, to answer the question this video poses, yes, you can beat the hardest Mario game as Luigi, though you'd be a bit insane to do it. However, like I pointed out numerous times in this video, there were moments where playing as Luigi was more preferable than playing Mario. Luigi may be the technical hard mode, but regardless of what brother you play, it doesn't change Lost Levels' terrible level design and stupid hard difficulty. I will say this was a special challenge to take on because usually a lot of people often ignore Luigi mode for, I would say, good reasons. However, if you've got some free time, this is a fun way to test your platforming skills. For now, I will end this video like I always do by saying thank you for watching and take care.